The house that you guys see behind me is one that you guys may or may not be familiar with. We bought this house back in October of 2019, so October of last year, and we actually intended on flipping it, but a couple things changed, and now we actually decided to rent it and do the BRRRR method on it. This now gives us a monthly cash flow of over $400, and it also increased our net worth by $50,000. Stick around until the end of this video, and I'm going to do a breakdown of all the numbers on the property and show you why this is such a good idea to use the BRRRR method and how you can use it to make a lot of money. If you want to build your net worth quickly but also get a residual monthly cash flow, then the BRRRR method is one of the best ways to do that. The BRRRR method is kind of a mixture between flipping houses but also having a rental property. It takes the best of both worlds out of both of those things, combines them, and gives you a pretty incredible strategy to build wealth and gain cash quickly. If this is your first time here to my channel, welcome. Let me introduce myself. My name is Bryce. I make videos here on YouTube talking about personal finance, but more specifically about real estate investing. Be sure to give me a thumbs up if you could. That really helps us out with the YouTube algorithm. And also be sure to click the subscribe button down below so that you get notified each and every week as we post new content. Also, if you want, you're welcome to follow me on Instagram. That's at Bryce Matheson. Again, there's a link down below in the description. So the BRRRR method, or BRRRR, stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. I think a lot of like old school real estate investors, they were doing this a long time ago, but it didn't have this fancy name. And that name, I think, was coined by Brandon Turner from BiggerPockets. However, you know this method, the concept is still the same, and it's been around for a long time. But essentially just that. You buy an old rundown property, you fix it up, you rehab it, then you put a tenant in there, you go to a bank and refinance it out at the new value, and then you repeat. You pull out your money and you do it again with another house. The very first letter, B, is buy. Pretty simple. You go find a nasty, gross, rundown house and you fix it up. And the best way to do this is to find what the after repair value is. So let's say I find a dumpy house, it's listed at, I don't know, $70,000. You find a dumpy house, we need to find what it's going to be worth when it's all fixed up and ready to sell. The best way to do that is to reach out to a realtor or somebody that you know that's really good at running comparables. And you say, what can this house go for if it's all fixed up and it looks really nice? They're gonna give you something called the ARV, which is the after repair value. Once you know that number, what you're gonna do is you're gonna multiply it by 0.7 or 70%. And then once you have that number, you're going to subtract your rehab costs. So let's say for easy numbers that we have a house and it's gonna be worth $100,000 when it's all said and done, fixed up. What we'll do is we'll take 70% of that. So we'll have $70,000. And then let's say that we have $20,000 in repairs. You'll take that $20,000 and subtract it from the $70,000 and you're left with $50,000. That $50,000 price, that's what you're gonna pay for this property. If the sellers of the property, if they want $80,000 or $70,000 for it, you know that you can't because your numbers just flat out are not going to work. Next thing we're gonna do is pretty straightforward. You're gonna rehab the property. Whether you've got a contractor who's coming in to do the work and you hire it all out, or you do all the work yourself. Whatever you do, you gotta go in and fix everything up. Most of the time this involves paint, carpet, sometimes it's new cabinets, you can refinish the cabinets, sometimes it needs a new roof, sometimes it needs a new bathroom vanity, sometimes you need to change plumbing or electrical or whatever it is. I mean, every single house is different. It's on a case-by-case basis, but you gotta go in and rehab it. The problem is you cannot go over the number that you budgeted before, or it's going to affect step number 4, and we'll get to that in just a second. Next thing you're gonna do is once everything's rehabbed and ready to go, you're gonna get a tenant in there. You're gonna find a great tenant, you're gonna put them in the property that you just fixed up and just rehabbed, because you need to show that this property makes income. So you get a tenant in there, you throw them in there, you make sure that they're gonna be a good tenant, that they're gonna take care of it, and they're gonna pay you on time every single month without fail, but you throw a tenant in there. Now, when we get to step number 4, the fourth R, which is refinance, you can go to the bank and say, look, I have this property. It's in amazing condition. It's just been completely rehabbed and there's an awesome tenant in there. And my cash flow it's $500 above and beyond all of the expenses. It's a great property. It's a great investment. I want to refinance it. So what you're going to do is you're now going to get an appraisal on this property. The bank is going to send somebody out to the property. They're going to look at the house and they're going to say it's worth this much. But the cool part is the bank is going to say it's worth this much. You owe only this much down here, whatever it is. And in our case, it's the $50,000 plus the $20,000 that you spent to rehab the property. So you've got this $30,000 spread. So now the bank is going to say, look, I'll offer you $100,000, but because we're only into this project 70, they're going to give us a $30,000 spread. They're going to give us that money back as a cash out refinance. That means that you're going to go to the closing table, you're going to re-sign papers all over again, but you're going to walk away with a check for $30,000. Or even better, if you paid all cash for this property, which the property that I'm going to show you in just a second, we actually got a loan, so that's not the case. But if you bought this property with all cash up front, you're going to be able to pull out all of that $70,000 because your new loan is going to replace that amount. So you'll walk away with a check for $70,000 instead. Now that you have all of your existing cash back, you can repeat it. You can go back, you can find another property and do the exact same thing over and over and over again. The amazing thing though is that every time you do this, you get a tenant who is continually paying you rent and you're getting cash flow every single month, but you get a property that's fixed up and your property is free and clear. You essentially paid nothing for this property. Okay, so why? I mean, it's really simple. Why isn't everybody else doing this? The thing is, a lot of people are doing this. Again, this is kind of the best of both worlds. You get a rental property, but you also get all of the benefits from a house flip. And here's the reason why that is. When you're a house flipper, typically you fix up a house fast and then you throw it back on the market. The problem is you're going to pay capital gains taxes. When you refinance this property, you're not selling the property, so there's no gains on the property. You're just pulling out the equity that you have in the property. That means that when you do go to sell this property, typically it should be after 1 year, you're only going to pay 15% in capital gains taxes as opposed to probably 22 to 25% because it's based off your normal tax bracket. The other thing now is you're gonna have less maintenance than a traditional rental property because it's like this house is essentially brand new. You've gone through and fixed everything. You've rehabbed everything. And so it should be a better property than just some random rental property that you buy anywhere off the street. And again, like I said before, you can use all cash to buy this property, or you can get a loan. It doesn't matter. Like I said, this example that I'll show you later in the video, we used a loan just because we didn't have all cash, and that's okay. It still worked out just great for us. And the other cool thing about this is it doesn't have to be a single family property. You can do this with a duplex, or you could even do this with a commercial property. The concept is the same. It doesn't have to be a single family home. Now, it sounds peachy, it sounds amazing, but this is not all risk-free. If you don't run your numbers properly, which I'm going to share an example of that again in just a second, then you could kind of screw yourself out of some cash. Or maybe you overestimate your numbers and the appraisal doesn't come back as high as you were hoping. Maybe you were hoping that the appraisal would come back at 100,000. What if it only comes back at 95 or 90,000? Then, you know, your numbers don't quite work. The way to avoid all of these is really just to do your homework. Make sure you get a solid after repair value. Make sure that you put at least 10 or 15% padding in there just in case the ARV doesn't come back what you're thinking. Also, the same thing, do the exact same thing with your rehab budget. Make sure that you put some padding in there, 10 to 15%, just in case things go over budget, which most of the time they almost always do. Okay, so let's go back to the property that I was showing you at the beginning of this video and give you a real life example of a property that we just used the BRRRR method on. Okay, so like I said before, the house that we're in right now, we purchased for $129,000. I apologize for the echo in here. Anyway, so like I said before, our strategy on this house kind of changed. We had to pivot. Initially, we were planning on flipping this house, but there's a couple things that we did wrong personally, and it made it so it really just didn't become a good flip. But instead, it becomes a perfect candidate for the BRRRR strategy. Really, the thing that made it not so good for a flip was that we were just a little bit too aggressive on our numbers. And after holding on to it for a couple months, it sat on the market and we weren't able to sell it for as much as we were hoping. And the reason that it sat on the market so long is just the timing. We put it on the market too late. So for example, we bought this in October of 2019. The rehab took a lot longer than we were expecting, 2 to 3 weeks longer. And that means that the rehab didn't really get finished until middle of Thanksgiving. So we put it on the market just hoping that something would happen. And unfortunately with Thanksgiving and Christmas and then New Year's, it sat on the market too long, and we would have to wait until this spring, which is, you know, right now, to get it back on the market, wait another 60 to 90 days for it to sell. And, you know, we decided that that wasn't the route that we wanted to go. So we, again, purchased this house for $129,000. We spent $19,000 as the down payment because we got a loan on this property. And then we spent another $18,000 fixing it up, making it nice, painting it, new carpet, new roof, everything to get it fully rehabbed and ready to go. So if you take our $19,000 plus our $18,000, that gives us a total rehab cost of about $37,000. Today, actually, we signed a lease with an incredible tenant who will be paying $1,400 a month. So now that we have a tenant in place and the property is actually making money, we can go to a bank and say, look, we have this property, we've got a great tenant in place, it makes money, we want to refinance this property and do a cash out refi. The appraised value on this place should be anywhere between $175,000 to $190,000. I know some of you guys watching this are probably thinking that's crazy because you live in California or New York or some of these other places that are really expensive, but where I live in Idaho, that's the going rate for a house like this. So again, $175,000 to $190,000 is what we should be able to get for this property. The lender that we work with, the lender that we use for almost all of our properties, they require that we keep 25% equity within the property. And a lot of people refer to that as 75% LTV or loan to value. That just means that the lender requires that we keep so much money in the property as collateral so that we have skin in the game. If we default on our loan, if we decide that we don't want to pay anymore, the bank can swoop up this property and they have all this money tied up into it, which is a really good deal for them. So we have to keep 25% equity in the property. If we take that mid-range value, let's say between that 175 to 190, and let's just say the bank comes back and says, we'll give you a loan for $185,000. That means that with all the equity tied up into this, the bank is going to finance $138,000 of this house. Okay, but now here's the really, really cool thing. We only owe $107,000 on this house. With our down payment as well as the mortgage payments that we've paid as we've been rehabbing this property, we only owe $107,000. So that means that if the bank is willing to finance $138,000 of it, but we owe $107,000, the bank is going to give us that difference. They're going to give us that spread. So we'll be able to walk away with $31,000 cash when it comes time to refinance this property, which should be within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Do you guys see how huge of a deal that is? Because we now have a property with a loan on it. It's making over $400 a month in net cash flow after all expenses, repairs, everything. And we now have a property that has almost $50,000 worth of equity. And on top of that, we get almost all of our money back that we put into this property. The reason that I say almost all of our money is because remember at the very beginning where I said that we were a little bit too aggressive on our numbers? That's the reason that we couldn't flip this house, is we were just too aggressive. We thought that we would be able to sell it for more than we could. We thought that we would have less into it for the rehab portion. So like I said, we're just a little bit too aggressive with our numbers. So we put $37,000 into this house. We're gonna get back $31,000. So we're gonna have $6,000 of our own money tied up into this property, but that's okay. Again, we've got almost $50,000 of equity into this property and a net cash flow per month of over $400. If you guys that are watching this are thinking of doing a BRRRR deal for yourself, please remember that most of the time, if you do it right, you can get all of your own money back, plus more if the property appraises for more. So if you buy a really good deal, don't do what we did. Make sure that you get all of your money back. Okay, but now even after saying all of that, even though we have $6,000 still tied up in this house, we're gonna be making right around $415 per month net from this property. If you take that $415 per month, multiply it by 12 months, divide that by the $6,000 that we put into this property, that means over the course of 1 year, we're gonna be making an 82% cash on cash return on our money. I don't know about you, I'm perfectly fine making 82% return on pretty much any investment. All right, you guys, that is the BRRRR method explained. Hopefully it made sense. If you have questions, please be sure to let me know down below. But it's an incredible way to build cash flow and build net worth and wealth super, super fast. Now we're going to take the money that we pulled out, that $31,000, and we're gonna do the very last R of the BRRRR method, which is repeat. We're gonna go out, we're gonna find another property, and we're going to do the exact same thing again. So that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate you being here. We'll catch you next week.